Yeah, I was doing a little background research, and I was like, "Wait, what is Reykjavik doing when he's not, coming out of the shadows every couple months
Hmm.
for his great idea of the quarter or whatever?" And I was like, "Oh man, his Patreon is just like lit up with stuff." And I was curious. This is more or less YouTube is the career, right? And then these are kind of supplemental things. For some
Hmm.
reason, I was always under the impression that you were like off, like doing documentary films. Like, I don't know if you're like going to war-torn zones in my imagination, then you come back to YouTube to chill out or something. I was like, that's a pretty great setup if you can, keep people on the hook and keep people interested and invested without them thinking, they're getting strung along, with their Patreon
Hmm.
dollars going to this and that. I was just curious if you could speak a little bit to kind of how that community's stuck together like that and not been like, some people's where they're like, I need 2-3 videos a month or I'm out, that kind of thing.
Well, it's kind of, I mean, originally I did meet my original metric when I started in terms of upload schedule was every other Sunday. It was, and if you go back to sort of the older videos from like, at this point, it doesn't fucking feel like it, but like, 7-8 years ago, whatever, though they were kind of meeting that barometer. And part of that was every other Sunday, and I still do this to this day, I visit my dad on the weekends and like we would sort of watch it together and kind of sort of get sort of the community reaction and that kind of thing. But the reason that kind of faded away, I think it started with the Orange Box video, might have occurred a little bit earlier, was just that the projects were just getting bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of the research for them, the amount of footage you have to get, and that this is all a one-man show for the most part. I collaborated with somebody named Stufer, who I'm incredibly grateful for over the years of becoming this kind of generalist, somebody that started off making thumbnails that then started dabbling into Blender and After Effects and all these other programs and adding these full scale like CG intros or just the sort of tiniest little details that are in reviews. One of my favorite things to do is I really like making thematic connections with the game itself. So what I like to do is if there's an interview clip or if there's a gameplay example or something, I really like it when it kind of seamlessly integrates into the game's own style. Yeah. One of the examples is in the Control video, and this is what somebody like Stufer allows you to do. There are these ghost echoes in Control of characters speaking where you see kind of this blue outline of them and they're talking to somebody, and it's this really cool diegetic way of presenting an audio log. Instead of kind of sitting there and going through a cold menu, you are walking through this world and witnessing kind of the event in front of you while still, getting the same kind of effect. So what I asked Stufer was, hey, there's this clip from an episode of Rapid Fire Questions on Game Informer. Could you imitate that? And they got it exactly on point. And that's the kind of stuff that I love to do in those videos. And Stufer is very busy right now, so I haven't been able to collaborate with them as much recently. But that's the kind of stuff I like to do. But the point is that is a rare case where I've got a goal that I actually can hand over to somebody else. For the most part, because the money I make is enough to make a living, but, not enough to branch this out and kind of build up in the scale of the projects, it means that, this thing that I want to particularly do, which is incredibly time consuming and for maybe 10 seconds of footage, at the end of the day, I still think it's worth it because it does make the video that little bit better. But, the amount of times I wish I could just hand something off to somebody else, it's crazy. Now, to your question about Patreon, though, and, sort of the way that kind of gets, a steady stream of content compared to YouTube, the Patreon in many ways, one that's kind of done in a way of being like assuring, hey, I am alive. I'm not just taking money and fucking off, and, getting cocaine and hookers and going on yachts and shit like that. I am still just, kind of sitting here in this room, writing away and writing away and writing away. And, so A, it's a kind of a way to reassure people that, hey, this is being worked towards content. And then B, in many ways, posting, whether it's recommendations on Mondays, that's a good way to kind of keep me in this environment of always experiencing art. About a year or two ago, there was this kind of period where I wasn't really, and I think I even mentioned this in the Roller Drum video, that I wasn't really, playing sort of that many games in the grand scheme of things. I wasn't really watching that many movies. That's something I very much sort of changed this year, of whenever there's free time, instead of going to Twitter, going to YouTube, and just doom scrolling and feeling terrible about the world, go experience, go play a game, go watch a movie, go through an album, go through something that has a beginning, middle, and end, and something that, whether it's good or bad, you take something away from it. And that's something that is going to inform your later experiences, especially as a critic. So the Mondays are valuable in that way. The Q&As on Wednesdays are valuable because that means, I get sort of hear these questions that somebody might, have that can't really fit into a video elegantly, can't really sort of, be summarized in a tweet, and have that back and forth with them. And then on Fridays, which are, I call Randomly Minds, which are basically just, little mini essays. Those things are valuable because in many ways they can kind of be the things that spark and lead to a video in the future. I'm pretty certain the Blitz video that I did was exactly that. I think there's like a shorter, shittier version of it on Randomly Minds somewhere from like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, just classic writer's workshop type stuff. Yeah, right on.
Yep, yeah. And the main thing too is to make sure that, because I think we've all experienced this before, of like, hey, here's this person's work that I really like, and here's this thing that I want to see from them, and it looks to be exactly the same thing that I expect from them for free, and now it's like a couple dollars for whatever reason. And I think, sort of, we've all kind of had that. So it's very important to me that, like, a video being given out early is kind of like the farthest that it goes. I don't want to get to a point of, making a piece exclusive in terms of video content. If that's going to be the case, like if it's something that can't really fit into that, like the interview that I did with Danny Bilson, I just put that in the description and put it to SoundCloud. And what I find is like, the majority of people don't go to it. It has like maybe 100 views or whatever, but it's important to still just kind of keep that accessible for those that are interested.
Yeah, I've noticed that's been a big point of contention with certain people, is that exclusivity, because people really feel compelled to make something that's like a chase item, like I got to give them something if they're going to buy in. I've got to really make the value happen. And it's like,
well, and there's right ways to do it, and obviously it differs in the industry that people work in, and a lot of this also just kind of comes down to kind of just my personal preferences on things. It's like, whenever I'm watching like a colleague or a peer who makes a video and they have an ad in it, I don't sort of hold anything against them because I get it. I get sort of the environments of that pressure, and if I really don't want that ad very badly, ad blocker exists, and if I don't want to listen, their 30-second segment, I can just, hit the right key a couple times and I go through it, so it's really not that big of an inconvenience. But it's my thing for not putting ads in videos is just a personal thing. It's not a judgment on anybody else. It's just I haven't found a way yet to integrate them seamlessly in a way that I'm comfortable with, so I haven't done it yet. I am very much considering that and workshopping things with friends to see if there's a way to do that, because unfortunately, my hometown is Vancouver, which is like the 3rd, 4th most expensive place in the world. And in many ways, the only reason I am here right now is because of patrons, and also because of family that take it easy on me on rent in the space that I'm in right now. It's me and one other family member. We're sharing this place, and it was going to be bulldozed, said like a couple of years ago, and then COVID happened. So that timeline has just been kind of getting extended. And in the meantime, whatever money I do make, I just throw it right into a savings account or investments or whatever. And I don't touch it, and I don't, buy anything that extravagant with it.
Yeah, no Teslas for you yet. The
No.
The sponsorship slots that always get me in videos are when people, they go off on a slight tangent and you can tell that they're segueing into an actual sponsor. That really bothers me, because it's like, it's almost deceitful, you're trying to pretend that sponsorship slot. Just tell me, sponsorship slot. We all understand that bills need paying, right? So it's cool. Just tell me.
That's the thing is, what I want to do is that if I were to ever, put them in there, the goal is to make it as overt as possible. I always prefer it, like, as much of a meme it is, I do like it, when Linus goes, with his bad dad joke, segues, because it's coming, and it overtly signals this is not the video portion anymore. This is not the opinion section. This is the clear separation between the product and what he's talking about.
I kind of like when people segment to ads, or not ads, but sponsorships where they do like a little skit or something. Mr. Matty and a few others do stuff like that, where they just they do this funny kind of skit where they're not really saying you definitely should do this thing or whatever. They're just trying to make a joke out of it while also getting money from it. And it makes it less serious, less intrusive, and it's just more entertaining than anything. And it doesn't really break the flow of the video. Typically, it usually kind of goes along with whatever they got going on, and I kind of like the way that's done.
Yeah, Sphere Hunter's done a couple of those that I really like. Noodle obviously is very good with those too. One of my favorite people in the world is Sparky1J, who I've known for quite some time. And we had this bet going on his old podcast that he was doing, which was called Artism. And we were making a bet that he was like, hey, I think I could get an audible.com sponsorship on that. And I'm like, Sparky, you're not going to get audible.com/artism. They're not going to go for that. That's not something they're going to go for. And he's like, okay, bet. So he works on it. And then eventually he did get that sponsorship slot and he made an ad for it. And the ad that he made for it. And then after that, his bet of getting it was like, hey, how quickly do you think I could get them to pull it from me? So then he makes his first commercial for it, some dude in a ski mask, hunting down and trying to murder somebody, with a knife in a scary cave or whatever. And the guy's just like, this is what happens when you don't use audible.com, shank, or whatever. And sure enough, he got that pulled in a month or two. So I'm not sure I want to go that far, with the games on that, but I've,
that's funny.
The idea that I was workshopping, and I disclosed this to patrons as well, and I've kind of mentioned this in other circles too, that my initial idea right now is that I like in Bricky's video the way that it's just at the very beginning. And it sounds counterintuitive, and it is, maybe annoying for a new viewer that's not familiar with the person, with the personality in mind, but it's 30 seconds, typically, maybe to a minute. It's usually pretty entertaining and goofy anyway. And the main thing that I care about is the pace of the video. One of the things that can happen with an ad, even if it's overtly singled, is that it's still a little bit too long of a pace break from kind of the rest of the piece, especially if it's a longer one, 3 minutes. That's really difficult to kind of elegantly slim down in there. Whereas if it's at the very, very, very start, I feel like that's something that allows a viewer to just hit their right key 3 times for 10 seconds and go through. So the idea that I've been kind of workshopping around is starting it with an ad on a television in an environment somewhere, kind of like Alan Wake-ish sort of presentation, and giving hints and information below or in corners or whatever about what the video is going to be about. And when that 30 seconds is wrapped up, then going into the sort of the feature presentation kind of thing. And the idea would be to make the ads made by other people that I know and give a chunk of the payment to them, because the only reason I would care about sponsorship is mortgages. I'm looking at rent and mortgages, because rent here in Vancouver is $2,500 a month. So it is absolutely ridiculous. And I figure if I'm going to spend $2,500 a month, I'd rather not just be setting it on fire every month and it going to someplace. So the idea right now, potentially, this is still a very difficult thing to set up, but the idea that I'm thinking of right now is take a sponsorship deal, that's usually about, $4,000, $5,000, give half of that to the person making the ad, and take the other half of that and put that towards the mortgage or payment. And whatever's left over, that's the ad rev and that's the Patreon. Because I'm not here to get rich. I don't really give a shit about that. GoldenEye, Rogue Agent, and Alpha Protocol are not in the YouTube meta, and I don't care. It's what I wanted to talk about. It's, just doing the same thing that I've always do. So, if that's something that allows me to keep doing that more easily, then that's something I will consider.